I can't do my video like this. The setting's better, but I still don't feel right. Wow, this is so much better. Holy cow. I like the look of this. Well, anyways, today for this video that I've been trying to get ready for the whole morning, I'm going to be explaining the idea of happiness. Now, when you think about happiness, you think of stuff that makes you obviously super happy. And from tons of my survey results, when I took a survey of tons of people in my grade and the grades around me in high school, we got so much information of 52 different people telling me what makes them happy. Things like friends, sports, other weird things, maybe a bit more off the cuff, kind of like hunting or even shooting, or being with family and friends was just such a huge one. And we got so much data on random things that make people happy. We also got data on things that make people not happy, like judgment, or friends that don't like them or turn their backs on them, or other things like that. So we gained this huge thing of data about what makes people happy. So what did we do with it? Well, what happened is I am researching this question, what makes us happy? But why are there so many different things that make us happy? Why do cats make me so happy, but down the street, my neighbors, their dogs, they have two of them. I could never do that. But why do they like dogs and I like cats? We're searching, in a sense, kind of what makes people happy, but also the idea behind their own interests. And so I have found 3 separate points that I'm going to be sharing with you today that I found to be very, very helpful to this study. And these are compiled from tons of interviews and also tons of other things like surveys and just talking around and own intuition. So that's what we're going to be doing. The first point was brought up, and I have my iPad right here so I can read the exact details of this, and I'll also be putting up random pictures that'll help guide you through understanding some of these different data points that we've gathered. But something that we did notice is that as I was gathering data, as different people were coming to me for different things, such as what makes them happy and other things, I realized that there was a discrepancy between ages. So I got a general idea of the age of everyone who took my survey. But every single time I noticed that someone over the age of 20 or 25, therefore they're more likely to have a career, or they're more likely to be married and kind of have their life set out. They don't have the stresses as much maybe of college as high school seniors do. What we found was that each of these people seemed to have a much more in-depth, much more self-introspective idea of what happiness is. For instance, it says here, the interesting point was that people 25 plus, they had a deeper sense of intimacy or connection with things that made them feel happy. So for example, some responded, knowing that I am loved by my family, friends, and significant other. So instead of, like some high school students said, spending time with friends, instead for people over the age of 20, it was knowing that I am loved by my friends. It kind of had a deeper meaning, and it, in a way, cut deeper than some of the other things did. So what brings me to believe that that's an idea here is that this is definitely a thing that points to age having a connection to your happiness. The more older you are, the more experiences you have that you can gain, go through, and make your own. And that's what's happening here. We see some of these older people, 25 plus, they're taking all these things and they're saying, it's not only my family that I love spending time with or going to the mall, it's the idea of providing for my family by going to the mall, which was mentioned by someone over the age of 20, or doing other things like that versus just going to the mall or spending time with friends. So the environment you're in affects happiness very, very greatly. And sometimes the environment you're in is the age you are. The environment that I'm in right now is I'm a 18-year-old high school senior, and that dictates sometimes what truly makes me happy, but also how I perceive it. So basically, it was the idea that your age connects things better and makes you view happiness in a different sense. So the older you are, it seems as if you have a more intimate connection with things that make you happy. And the younger you are, the more room you have for understanding what makes you happy. And that's the first point that we figured out. So the second point that we're making is basically this, and it's the idea that what happiness means to people is actually kind of the same thing. So this is different than asking the question that we asked earlier of what makes you happy. You could say getting a really nice new car, or just simply going out to the mall, or getting to see a friend during this insane quarantine that we've been going through. But we asked a different question, and that exact question is, what is happiness to you? So we interviewed 3 people, and I keep saying we, I mean I. I interviewed 3 people, and these 3 people, when asked this question, it was absolutely amazing. They all answered with one word. They had many words, but there was one word that was common between all 3 of them, and it was the word content. So right now you can pause the screen, and I'm going to put the 3 actual responses up for a few seconds so you can look at that. But anyways, the idea behind each of these things is that people truly, instead of having happiness as something that is like a joyous moment specifically to them, it's the idea of being content. Like if you look at participant number 1, having a content state of mind, because being content where you are, it not only makes you feel a more complete person, but a person that has a more positive outlook on life. And then the second person, happiness to me is someone who in the moment is content, has no worries or no feeling of something holding them down. The idea through each of these is that contentedness is truly what binds people together in a feeling of happiness. And what's interesting about that is that truly could lead to what actually makes us happy, and why our environment, as I was just explaining earlier, truly has an effect on what makes us happy. We have so many different things that are affecting our environment. Not one single person I know has the same life. Therefore, every single one of these things, they have different interests. But what's nice is that all of us are connected in those interests through something that's called content. And that is being safe, it's being even keel where you are, you're happy where you are in the present moment with what you have. We found that very interesting as I was going through each of these data points, and one interviewee stated that because of a content attitude, it opens their mind up to a more positive outlook. And because of that, although they might have a very, very different life from interviewee number 2, this interviewee number 3, they still think and view happiness as a content state of mind. And that's, I believe, what connects us all together in happiness. So the third point that is made by all of this research that we've been doing for many months now and gotten so many details about is probably one of the most important, and I believe that it actually answers the original question I asked, which was, what makes us happy and why does that differ so much for so many people? So throughout the interview, which is a primary source of gathering data for this exact question, I asked this very specific question. It said, how do you think that your background might contribute to what brings you happiness? Now, the purpose of this question was to figure out whether or not people attributed any of what's happened in their past or anything to what makes them happy. An example of this for myself would be I thoroughly enjoy shopping. Now, the reason for that is because something that I did as a kid, or we would do a lot, is we would go to the mall and shop around with my mom. Whether or not we liked it or not, we still did it. So we did it many times, and every once in a while I would tell myself, I actually thoroughly enjoy doing this. That's something that brings me personally happiness. So the question was asked to these three interviewees, how might your background affect your level of happiness? And without fail, every single answer I got from all three interviewees was almost exactly the same. It pointed towards the exact same objective, which helped so much with gathering data for this. Each of them said, and I quote, this is exactly what they said, a very specific one would have been interviewing an 18-year-old in high school, and he said that growing up, my parents, they disciplined me, but they weren't constantly angry or upset. So I grew up in a mostly good household. So that definitely had an effect on me. And basically what they said after that was they believe that because of what their family has instilled in them, this person specifically being very much into hockey and skiing, he finds those same things to bring him happiness with his friends because his family and him did that when he was very, very young. And so this is, most people would think that's quite logical, but in a sense, that's kind of the question I'm trying to answer here. And he attributed what brings him happiness in playing hockey and playing soccer as a goalie to his family doing that with him when he was very, very young. Another interviewee, actually being someone very close to me, he mentioned how when he was younger, his family often rewarded him for different things, such as parent-teacher conferences or something like that. So when he got older, every single time that he did something or when he did good on something, he was more inclined to think that he would get a gift or a reward for doing good. And that brought him happiness when people gave him a reward. So that's kind of the question that we are ultimately answering here is because these people, what's happened in their past ultimately has definitely affected what is happening in their present. Because of what makes them happy, what brings them interest and gets their mind going is very, very often stuff that has happened in the past or they have been conditioned to enjoy or do with their free time. And that's kind of the question we've been asking. And that was the third and most important point to answering this question. And I believe that's very important for us to look at. So what? With all this information that I've gathered and all of these random facts we've brought together and questions I've asked people, what do we actually do with it? I was thinking about that, and I've been thinking about that for a very long time, ever since we stopped gathering the data. And something occurred to me in the fact that we as people, I think, get separated a lot from each other. And the reason for that is because of our interests. Friend groups at schools get separated because they like certain things or doing certain things with each other. That is basically the definition of a friend group. Friend groups start because they find other people that enjoy their stuff and things they enjoy doing. The problem is that when it comes to these friend groups, a lot of time there can also be a lot of drama. And a lot of people can actually feel very left out sometimes. And it's kind of an elementary idea, but it's a very, very serious thing that a lot of high schoolers and middle schoolers deal with. And it was a question that was brought up to me that how does the data that I've gathered help us understand maybe how to change from this perspective of judging people because, oh, well, they're friends with those people because they have their own interests over there, so I don't need to be friends with them necessarily. And what I believe this data points to is us as a society as a whole being able to look at each other's families and not only our interests. Not only I'm going to look at that person and say something about them because I know that they did this one time or they like doing this in their free time. Instead, you can look back at their past and say, you know, there's a lot more to the story here. There's a lot more that's going on besides them just enjoying doing something that I might not enjoy doing so much myself. So we as a society need to look and take into account every single person's individual story, their background, their environment that they're in, things that might affect their interests and affect their happiness. And that's ultimately what we need to decide to do as a society to move forward and away from this idea of separation because of interest And ultimately, I believe because of all of that, and because of each of the questions and points addressed in this whole entire video, that we as a society will become a lot more accepting and just better in general. So I hope that in all of this you've learned something, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity I've had to be able to learn so much because of this class and the opportunity to sit here and make this video. So to all the teachers in this very, very interesting time, thank you so much. This class has absolutely made a difference.